You see her standing in the hallway, but her feet don't touch the floor. Her back is turned, her hair is wet, and though the light flickers, she casts no shadow. You call her name softly first, then louder. She doesn't flinch. You take a step forward, but the hallway stretches. The closer you move, the farther she becomes. You once believed this was love, that love meant reaching, that closeness meant safety. But what if her silence wasn't fear? What if her distance wasn't retreat, but design? She didn't leave you. She opened the wound she saw behind your eyes and placed herself just beyond it, because she knows if she becomes still enough, you will project everything onto her. And the moment you do, she is no longer a woman. She becomes your myth, your ghost, your mother. You aren't chasing her. You're chasing the mirror where she stopped reflecting you. If this has already happened not once, but always, then let the silence remember you. Like the video, leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe before you vanish again. A woman's distance is not a wall, but a mirror that shifts when you reach for it, not to escape you, but to make you chase your own reflection. She doesn't run. She doesn't even speak. She simply tilts her gaze and you lose your footing. You think she's retreating, but she's not. She's becoming still, like a pool of water just before it mirrors the sky. And you, desperate for closeness, mistake stillness for rejection. But it's reflection, brutal, precise, alive. She is not moving away from you. She is watching what moves within you. You reach toward her, but the space between you stretches like breath before the scream. You try to close it with questions, with gifts, with explanations that mean nothing outside your own skull. But every word you throw is a stone, and the more you throw, the more ripples distort the image. She disappears only because you disturb the surface that was showing you who you really are. You tell yourself she's afraid of intimacy, but it is you who flinched when she saw too much. The panic in her eyes wasn't fear of closeness. It was the echo of your own concealed shame. You spoke with confidence, but you were naked inside, and she heard what you didn't say. That's why she turned her head, not to leave, but to spare you from seeing the look on your own face reflected in hers. She doesn't vanish. She dissolves like a dream you try to explain but cannot hold. Not because she is elusive, but because you do not know the shape of your own longing. You called it connection, but what you wanted was something else: worship without exposure, touch without truth, the illusion of being understood without being seen. When she grows distant, she is not punishing. She is transforming. She becomes a surface too smooth for you to grab, too polished for you to invade, because if you are desperate, you will project. And if you project, you will believe she is cold, cruel, confusing. But she has only stopped feeding your illusion. You were never speaking to her. You were speaking to the mirror and begging it to lie. She shifts subtly in posture, in tone, in absence. You call it mixed signals, but mixed signals are clarity in the language of the unconscious. She cannot tell you directly what her soul is defending because even she does not fully know. She only knows when she stands still. You come closer, and when she moves closer, you suffocate. So she stays where the tension ripens, where she feels your hunger without having to answer it. And here lies the paradox you refuse to see. You call her manipulative when she mirrors you too sharply. You call her distant when she no longer plays the role you wrote for her. You call her confusing when she begins to exist outside your story. But she was never your story. She was the gate. To what? To the wound. The one you forgot. The one she never touched, but always illuminated. You remember her pause that fraction of a second too long. You remember the breath she didn't take, the message she didn't reply to. You remember the absence like a bruise you can't explain. But none of these were rejections. They were thresholds, and you were being dared not to win her, but to see yourself. You thought the mirror would follow your script. You thought desire meant closeness, that reassurance meant power. But you were wrong. The feminine is not the reward, it is the revealer, and once it stops echoing your performance, you fall apart. Not because she's gone, but because your reflection no longer flatters your fantasy. She didn't change. She just stopped nodding. And in the stillness, you met the part of yourself you buried, the part that begged to be needed, that whispered, "Please, stay," when you pretended to be aloof, that twisted every unanswered message into an accusation against your worth. And now she's quiet, so quiet, it hurts. But it's not the silence that wounds. It's the silence inside you that's been awakened. The silence you've masked with noise, roles, seduction. She didn't invent this. She revealed it. She didn't abandon you. She stopped absorbing your performance, and suddenly, the echo vanished. There is a place between affection and abandonment, a zone where she hovers not out of cruelty, but because her body remembers what her mind can't explain. She's not reacting to you. She's responding to the field you carry, the psychic fog of all your unspoken needs. And when the fog gets too thick, she steps back, not because she doesn't care, but because she does. You won't believe this. You will fight it. You will call her broken, or unavailable, or narcissistic, because it's easier to label than to feel. But deep down, you know, her silence has a shape that fits the wound you've hidden since childhood. The one shaped like a woman who didn't come when you cried. And now, here she is again. Not the same one, but the same pattern. Only this time, she's not apologizing for it. She's embodying it, because she has remembered something you forgot. Distance is not rejection. Distance is sacred. Distance is where the truth appears. She isn't running. She's holding the mirror higher, and the closer you get, the more distorted you become, until finally, the mirror breaks not because she dropped it, but because you demanded it love you without ever seeing what it reflected. That's the tragedy, isn't it? You confuse devotion with possession. You mistake reflection for resistance. But she was never resisting you. She was resisting the lie. The one where you are the center. The one where her role is to orbit your need and never call it gravity. When she falls silent. When she backs away. When she replies in hours instead of seconds, it is not indifference. It is the sacred movement of the feminine when it refuses to collapse under the weight of unconscious projection. But here's the final cruelty. You could have met her. You could have stayed still. You could have seen the mirror for what it was and let it break you. Instead, you blamed her. And now, she's gone. Not because she vanished, but because you chased your reflection until it vanished with you. She retreats not to punish, but to consecrate herself, because in absence, she becomes sacred again, unpossessed and untouchable. You saw her silence as a door slammed, but it was never made of wood. It was a curtain drawn in a temple you do not own. You pounded on it with your impatience, called it rejection, called it cold. But no, it was sanctuary, not for her body, for her soul. And your noise could never cross the threshold. She does not retreat to destroy connection. She withdraws to recover the pieces you kept naming as yours. Because each time you demanded access with your questions, your checking, your anxiety folded inside compliments you chipped at her altar. She smiled, and you mistook it for surrender. But behind the smile, she was hiding candles you kept blowing out. There is a silence women know, not the silence of shyness, the silence of recollection. A sacred space behind the ribs where their true name waits, not the name you gave her when she made you feel alive, not the role you cast her in when you needed softness. She pulls away because you touch that name with unclean hands, not dirty with malice, dirty with hunger. She has learned slowly, painfully, from years of invisible depletion that affection given without pause becomes currency. So she vanishes, like incense in a closed room. You say she's manipulative, but what you call manipulation is sometimes survival, and what you call distance is a restoration of dignity. You misunderstand the feminine when you measure it by proximity. You thought her warmth was always yours. You thought her care was infinite. You forgot that giving is only pure when it chooses to stop. She becomes sacred again in withholding because it is the only way to see if you love her or just love how she made you feel. You say you're confused by the change, but that confusion is proof. Proof that you never saw her fully, only the reflection of your own hunger mirrored in her softness. And now, that softness has vanished. Not because she hates you, but because she reclaimed it. For herself. For the version of her that existed before you turned her into medicine. She was not created to heal your ache. She was created to remember herself. The ritual of absence is not meant to punish. It is meant to reconsecrate. She becomes untouchable not to gain power over you, but to retrieve power from you. The difference is everything. You see her calm and call it indifference. You see her pause and call it disinterest. But indifference doesn't burn like this. Disinterest doesn't shake your gut. You feel the ache not because she vanished, but because you can no longer reach the part of her that kept rescuing your unworthiness. You weren't addicted to her love. You were addicted to the reflection of value you borrowed from her presence. And now she's gone. Or rather, now she's returned. She has returned to a silence older than you. One passed down in bloodlines and lullabies. The sacred knowledge that a woman who stops explaining herself becomes dangerous. Not because she hurts, but because she exposes. She exposes how much of your power depended on her self-erasure. You ask what happened, why she changed. But she didn't change. She remembered. And what she remembered was unbearable to you, that she has the right to exist in mystery. That her soul does not owe you certainty. That her body is not a question you are entitled to answer. You are not in pain because she left. You are in pain because she stopped narrating her movements to you. You say you miss her, but you only miss the mirror that made you feel certain. Her withholding is not rejection. It is revolution. She is no longer rehearsing love, no longer performing softness to calm your fears. She has become still, and in her stillness, the performance ends. She no longer soothes your confusion. She no longer clarifies her every pause. And in the absence of her reassurance, your illusions starve. You will call this cruel, but it is devotion. Devotion to something holier than being chosen. She is devoted now to her own silence, to the echo that lives in her chest when she stops explaining, to the rhythm of her own breath, free from the pressure to match yours. And here, in the quiet, she becomes more than a woman. She becomes myth. Not because she wants to, but because your mind can no longer place her in a box. You say she's distant, but she's not far. She's just no longer held in your grasp. You feel powerless now, because her absence is not reacting. It is creating. She is rebuilding something in the dark, a sanctuary where she can exist unmirrored. And the agony you feel is not loss. It is exile from control. You thought you knew her, but what you knew was the version shaped by your presence. Now that she's alone, she's becoming not a stranger, but a secret. And not all secrets want to be revealed. She chooses not to respond, Not to hurt you, but to protect what your expectations kept diluting. She knows now that energy without boundary becomes consumption, that being available makes her a product. So she closes the gates and watches who tries to break them. If you truly cared, you would not pound the walls. You would kneel at the door. You would wait, not as a tactic, as a prayer. But you don't wait, you push. And the more you push, the deeper she retreats, not in fear, but in defense of something holy. Because somewhere inside her, beneath the tenderness, the giving, the soft nodding, lives a priestess. And that priestess knows attention can be violence, especially when it asks her to trade selfhood for approval. So now she walks alone, not away from you, but toward herself. Her silence is not absence, it is presence without obligation. She no longer asks, "Do you still want me?" She asks, "Do I still want to be reached?" And you, for the first time, have no answer. You watch her from afar. You imagine her with someone else. You spiral into visions of replacement. But she is not replacing you. She is replacing the part of herself that once believed she had to be understandable to be loved. You say she is hiding, but she is not. She is cleansing. You say she is gone, but she is not. You are gone from the throne you sat on inside her mind. She has burned the throne and swept the ashes, and now her stillness becomes unbearable, because it's not waiting, it's becoming, and becoming does not ask for permission. What you call attraction is a reenactment of the child in you approaching the closed door of the feminine, trying once again to be let in. You stand outside the room again, not physically but psychically. The door is always closed, and your hand is always lifted. You knock gently at first. You wait. You listen. And when nothing comes, the panic starts to leak through your fingertips. You are not a man in this moment. You are a boy. A boy replaying the first ritual of longing proximity without access. Affection just out of reach. Safety laced with ambiguity. She is not the first, but she is the one that made the pattern bleed. You don't want her love. You want the feeling of finally being chosen by what once denied you. Her distance becomes unbearable, not because it hurts, but because it activates the echo you buried. The echo of waiting in the hallway while someone else held her attention. The echo of the warm voice that turned cold the moment you needed it to stay. You think you're chasing a woman, but you're chasing the origin of your wound. The moment you first realized you were too much, or not enough, or invisible. And when she pulls back, that original equation roars. If she loved me, she wouldn't disappear. If I mattered, she would answer. You do not say this out loud. You do not even know you believe it. But every text you send without a reply, every heartbeat that counts the minutes, all of it is the child at the door, waiting for the light to return under the crack. She becomes the screen onto which you project the archetype of the unreachable feminine, not because she is cold, but because she mirrors the blueprint encoded in your nervous system, a blueprint shaped before you had words. So when she withholds, it's not her voice that vanishes, it's your stability, because you built that stability around response, around approval, around being good enough for someone to stay. You do not desire her, you desire her access. And when that access is removed, you confuse grief with obsession. It is not the woman you miss. It is the feeling of control you once had over the fantasy of reunion. She does not know she's triggering it. Or maybe she does. In some silent animal way. Women often feel it before they name it, the heaviness of being needed in ways they didn't agree to. The unspoken weight of becoming a mother to the ache no one ever soothed. And so she steps back, not in cruelty, in refusal, the refusal to mother your boy while being your lover. She senses it, the flicker in your eyes, the desperation behind your charm, the need not for her, but for rescue. You say you love her, but love built on reenactment is not love. It is regression disguised as devotion. You want to be held in the exact place you were once abandoned. And when she doesn't, you rage not at her, but at the ghost who trained you to beg. She is not the mother who turned away, but your body cannot tell the difference, and your hunger becomes a maze in which she keeps disappearing. Even when she's near, you fear her distance. You try to preempt it with affection, with logic, with offerings, but underneath, you are terrified, because she holds the power to reopen the hallway, the one where you learned that wanting was dangerous, that needing meant rejection. She cannot fix this, and if she tries, she becomes the caretaker, not the partner. She becomes the one who absorbs your regressions instead of meeting your soul, and that imbalance becomes poison. You think you are being vulnerable, but what you are doing is asking her to become the container that your past failed to provide. And no woman, no matter how loving, can carry a wound she did not inflict. So she lets go, not because she lacks compassion, but because her body knows if she holds you while you regress, she disappears, not literally, but spiritually. She vanishes into your pain and forgets her own shape. And she has done that before, for others, for years, for systems that taught her to please, to soothe, to bend, but not anymore. She withholds because she refuses to reenact, because she too has a child watching from the hallway, a child who once learned that her value came from compliance, that closeness meant collapse, and so she steps back, not away, but inward, into herself, into the silence where her own wounds speak. And there, you both hover, children in adult bodies, longing for something that cannot be given by each other, only remembered through. You will try to fix this by proving you are worthy. You will try to earn her again, but earning is not healing, and proving is not intimacy. She is not your therapist, not your redeemer. She is a woman, and when she creates distance, it is a line drawn in sand by a soul who refuses to be another hallway for someone else's ghosts. This is the cruelty of awakening. The moment you realize your attraction is not random, that your chemistry is not destiny, it is repetition, a magnetic pull toward the unresolved. And the worst part, she may feel it too, that the reason she once felt drawn to you was not love, but recognition. Recognition of the little boy in your voice, the tiny tremble behind your bravado, the way you sought her like a lighthouse instead of a mirror. She may have wanted to be needed, until the need became a hunger too ancient to feed, until your longing stopped asking for presence and started demanding salvation. And now, she cannot breathe near you, not because you are unworthy, but because she no longer wishes to carry what you will not confront. You say she's running, but she is standing still. It is you who are chasing, not her, but a door that will never open the way you want. You may never understand this. You may call her cruel until your dying breath, but somewhere inside, you know the ache isn't hers, it is yours. It was always yours, and the hallway still stands. The boy still knocks, but the woman behind the door has vanished, not because she hated you, but because she refused to mother the man who would not meet his child. A hallway, one door, no footsteps. You stand there still, though the years have changed your face. Your hand no longer knocks, it rests, trembling against a memory that will not fade. Behind the door, not a woman, not anymore. Just a mirror, a small, quiet mirror, and written in the dust, she did not disappear, You did. No music plays, no closure comes. Only the silence of a name you once whispered into someone else's body, hoping it would echo back as love. It didn't. It never did. If you're still here, let the silence remain. Like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe and let her go.